After every race, I engage with a system that has helped me improve as a HYROX athlete over and over. It's a 4-step process that really works. So I'm going to show you each step along this process to help you improve as a HYROX athlete as well. So my literal first step when I am trying to figure out what I'm going to do in the next block is just reflection. I take several minutes, maybe hours, to just sit and write out my thoughts, my feelings about how the race went, and some things that are a little bit more qualitative. And from there, I get a really good space to kind of like dump all my thoughts down so that I can then make a plan based off those thoughts, right? Because I don't want to go directly to the hard facts, the hard numbers, but I do want to make sure that I am spending time thinking about how I feel about the event. And that to me is as important as the actual result. Like how I'm feeling about it, how it went, is a really good indicator of what I need to do next. So now we get to review. The feelings are out of the way. Now we can just talk about the hard numbers. So now I use a bunch of tools that I have that I figured out that work best for me over the years. One is the HYROX Training Hub from my watch. I take the data from there and I dump that into a spreadsheet that tells a bigger picture for what we're doing for hybrid sports. I haven't found a great review, like training review app quite yet. There's a new one that I've been using called Hybrid that is again more of a training log. And that is something that I'm going to use more and more going forward. And then I take a look at some of the race analysis from tools like RoxOpt, which is going to help me understand how the race actually went from a hard numbers standpoint. So then I can start to build around the hard numbers to improve on places where I need to, or to double down on things that have already gone well. Along with the review, I try to do a bit of a competitor analysis. So I take a look at how the athletes who I want to compare myself against in the races, see how their splits played out, and seeing how they play out over the course of time and how I feel about them compared to me. And if it's like if I'm compared well against them, or if there's a gap there that I feel like I can close. I'm pretty fortunate in this because I can see how the competitors are moving through different stations. So I can see, like, review the actual tape to see if, like, okay, this person beat me on lunges by quite a bit. So what are they doing something different than I'm doing on lunges? Or is it just a fatigue thing and a fitness thing in general? So that's the next part here, is to actually review the hard numbers so that I can plan out what I want to do in the next block of training from an objective standpoint. So this next piece has been overlooked in my training for a long time, and it might not feel like actual training, but the results hinge on these controllables quite a bit. Things like sleep, stress, nutrition, these things are very important for me. So I can't just steamroll past them and be like, I just need to do this many intervals, this much strength work, and I'll just be better, because there could be things that are just sabotaging my results, like sleep, like nutrition, if I don't feel like I have these things as locked in as they might need to be. For me, it's in particular just like stress, making sure lifestyle factors in general are accounted for and that they're not having a negative impact on my training. Because it doesn't matter what I do in training if I'm not accounting for the stress around it and the stress that training itself is going to present. So this part is something that is critical, and it makes a huge difference in a good performance versus a bad performance, more than even the training itself. The training, of course, needs to be dialed in, which we will touch on, but the other controllable factors need to be reflected upon and accounted for and changed if needed to be, to really make sure that the training is going to work the way that I need it to work. So now that we have all of these other necessary pieces in place, we can start to talk about what the training is actually going to look like. And the first piece of that is to work yourself backwards. Figure out where you want to go and where the race is gonna be, and start at that point and then back things up, right? So how I like to do it, figure out on my run intervals, for example, I will be like, I wanna reach 10K of run intervals at XYZ pace. So to get there over the course of 8 weeks, I need to start at 5K of intervals, or whatever it is that makes logical sense in terms of a progression. So this is now the point where I'll start to kind of put things in place by working backwards and start to kind of phase my training in a way that will progressively lead me to the actual event. So this is the principles of just progressive overload and periodization. But once those other pieces are taken care of, then you can really have a good sense of how to approach the training so that you can figure out the best route to get to the end result. So that's how I like to do it, is figure out like where I want to go and what elements, what pieces I need to put in place. Another thing that is very important to consider here is when I am figuring out the next route that I want to take, I need to understand what I'm going to replace or what I'm going to substitute, what's going to stay the same. And what I can't do is start to add. There have been the points where I have just added and added and added and added, and then at the end of that block, I'm just like completely like wiped out. I have overtrained because I'm not picking my spots so that I'm able to recover in an appropriate way. I believe that one of the biggest challenges in HYROX training is not overtraining. So I've gone down the route of like adding things like, okay, I need to get better at the row. I'm going to add more row intervals. Or I need to get better at running, I'm gonna add more running intervals. So for me now, it's understanding what I need to do that's going to give me the best return, or how I'm going to piece together the program and when I'm going to specifically add things in or take things out. Like for example, if I'm going to be doing a strength block where I want to really improve my lower leg strength, right? I'm going to have several blocks or several weeks of say front squat or back squat. But as it gets close to the event, I'm going to take that out and replace it with something like sled push. Something that's going to be a little bit more specific with still that goal of getting stronger, but I'm just not going to add. I'm not going to take my sled push and then add front squats and then add back squats, because there's just a recoverability issue here that I've gone to the point where I know how much work I can do in a week, so I know that I can't add anything on top of that. So that's a very important piece of this. And it's real easy to get carried away and be like, I'm just gonna add and add and add and add and add. But at the end of the day, it's just not going to work. And more is not always better. Sometimes it's just more, and that is not the goal here. The goal is to perform well. So making sure that I'm making the choices to make the appropriate substitutions and not just adding things because I think I need to add things along the way. So now comes the point where I can start to kind of put the plan together and have a couple pillars of training that I'm going to work around. The threshold, the anaerobic threshold work is going to remain the same that I've done in the past several blocks, where I'm tracking my zone 4 and building progression around that. On the running side in particular, I'm going to have a very specific block where it comes to increasing the density within the intervals, right? So just doing longer intervals and doing them at a faster pace. So it's very uncomfortable, and I need to work from the bottom up so that I can expand on the duration at a similar type speed. So that's gonna be a one block. Another thing I'm going to do around that is to really work on the speed and the efficiency. So being able to run fast. And that's one thing HYROX you don't necessarily need to have is a lot of speed. So I've kind of pulled away from that, but I'm going to work small doses of speed in with increased frequency just to have some speed reserve for these faster workouts so that they don't feel as fast as my leg turnover is improving. I'm going to do very specific strength workouts around lunges and burpee broad jumps. These are areas where I need to improve on. So explosive ability in my upper body for burpee broad jumps and just plyometric like fast twitch things for the actual broad jump itself, and for some bigger, wider range of motion and mobility in that range of motion. So being able to work in a large range of motion during the walking lunges, so that I feel like I can take bigger steps and be strong and have endurance in those spots. So this is the process that I really take part in every single time I finish a race, or every time I'm going to have a goal coming up. I make sure that I reflect on the previous results. I take a look at the actual planning and the workouts that I did. I figure out what other controllables that I have, and then I write down the end point first and then start to work backwards to accomplish those goals. So next stop is Miami for doubles. I'll have a great time reflecting upon that. So we'll talk to you then.